So today we are going to talk about circular economy, as you know. Some of you might have some previous knowledge of the topic, someone don't. So don't worry, we're going to just start with the basics. And if any of you want to, get a little bit more of studies and tools to get a little bit more in depth with the topic. We're also, after CV, we're always at your disposal to help with other resources to get a little bit more in depth with the topic. As I see that everyone is joining now, so that's perfect. Thanks for joining us today. I know that the meetings are always too many and the time is always too little. So we really appreciate you taking this chunk of time out of your day to join us. The session is recorded, so we will also share in case you need to leave earlier, and I will send you then a bit of a recap of the outcomes of the session that we will do during the workshop part. So it's just going to be a brief introduction, and then we will just workshop around circular economy and how we can implement that, or what are the priorities in terms of City of Casey as a community to move towards a circular economy. So before we talk about circular economy and the solutions that it can give us, we need to understand the problem. And the fact is that on this planet, not a lot has changed since the Industrial Revolution that brought us the electricity and then the railways and shipping infrastructures, mass production of the goods that we buy every day. And sure, the level of automation has increased. We used to communicate via Morse code, and now we can FaceTime our friends who will fly on a plane across the ocean. However, the way in which we create and use these innovation and technology hasn't changed that much. What we do is we extract resources like minerals and precious metals or biomass, so substances that come from agriculture and livestock. We manufacture these substances thanks to an energy source that today is largely produced by extracting oil and gas and coal. We then buy and use these products that we have created, and then we throw them away in landfill once we're done with them. So this is a dominant system today. In fact, over 90% of the global production of goods works with this logic that we call linear. So this means that as soon as we buy something, that product is one step closer to obsolescence. It's losing value as we use it, and it's getting closer and closer to just become waste sitting in a landfill. So how can we retain the value of the products that we make and use? Circular economy offers us a few options. And the first option should be not to buy at all. And you probably already do this when you use a sharing app, for example, to access a car or a scooter or a bicycle. The second option is after we decide that we are buying something and using something, the first option to keep that value of the product high is to try to reuse it or resell it. So that's the idea behind, that green dress that you bought for your cousin's wedding that you probably regret buying, but it's still good as new, so you can resell it online and even make some money out of it. The third choice that we have is to refurbish. So this happens often with smartphones, for example, when the manufacturer takes back your phone, and with some small interventions, it sets it back to the initial factory characteristics and settings. The fourth option is to remanufacture. So one level of intervention more, for example, that upholstery on my chair needs to be changed. So I'm gonna have to throw that away, replace the fabric, but I can still keep the frame. And with some targeted repairing, I can get a brand new chair with a new look. As you can see, recycling is basically considered the last option. And that's the difference between sustainability and circularity. Recycling is not really the solution that we want. It's actually the last one that we want to keep, because it requires a lot of energy, and we need to break products, take them apart for their components. Recycling is not a perfect science and a perfect process, so we try to avoid it. We try to retain the value of the product by keeping it there on top of the pyramid where it has. We want to make the most of that product without intervening with our time, our resources, or any energy invested. So we talked about solving, the problem when we have bought something, we have purchased that, we're using it, and it might be already too late, but we can make the most of it. The idea behind circular economy is to prevent us from getting to that point where we're purchasing, we need to find a solution. Why don't we find a way to solve problems upstream? So when we buy products, we don't need to worry about all of these pyramid options that most of the times don't really help keeping and retaining the value. So there's just three rules that can apply to every single product that we produce. The first one is to design out waste and pollution. So when you design a product, it should not have any waste and pollution costs, because if it does, it means that there's a design flow from the beginning. The second rule of the circular economy is to keep products and materials in use for as long as possible. So we want to avoid to get at that bottom of that pyramid where the only solution left is recycling. And then we want to regenerate natural systems instead of extracting. So we need to rebuild the natural capital instead of extracting resources. So very nice, it's so great, but how does that really work in real life, right? In a circular economy, you live in a house where the materials are not mined or extracted. They're recovered from buildings that don't need that material anymore. Entire parts of the house are 3D printed with recycled materials to create a design that is just unique, just for you. Once it's built, your house will have a material passport. You will know exactly what it's made of. And if you decide to renovate one day, you will be able to sell those parts of the house instead of having to pay for demolition and waste disposal. So you can actually create an income from it. Your house is built with a state-of-the-art energy efficiency. So you will have solar panels and on the roof, a little garden to grow fruit and vegetables. Your home food scraps will be composted to fertilize your own garden, or it will be disposed through a trash compactor, and under your sink, a grid will take it to the local facility to transform it into clean energy to power the city and make it self-sufficient. The sensors in your fridge will make sure that your grocery is done when you need it, ordering through a home delivery service that will send you all the products that you need, and taking back the containers from the previous grocery, eliminating completely single-use packaging. We don't buy clothes and let them sit in the closet for years. We will have a membership to an online service that knows our tastes, our needs and sizes, and will deliver a set of clothes periodically. At the end of the month, we send the clothes back and we receive a new box. We do the same with our children that grow up so fast and seem to always need to change the size of the clothes they wear, or always getting tired of the ones that they have and wanting some new ones. For the shoes and the garments that we prefer to buy, a 3D scanner will create our avatar, and we will be able to order custom-made shoes and tailored dresses comfortably from our living room. And the problem of the wrong size doesn't exist anymore. Smartphones and headphones are built in a modular way, and we use them through a leasing model. Whenever we need to repair or replace a component, we can just order it from the brand and replace it ourselves. And if the smartphone doesn't work anymore, or we need a new one, the company would just take it back, retrieving the precious materials it's made of and sending us the new model. When we go to work in the morning, we can take advantage of an effective mobility system that tells us the best way to get to the office with a combination of public transport, electric scooters, and cars that are provided by the council and that works through a sharing app. The air quality finally has improved, and where we used to have car parks, we now have space to plant trees, restoring the natural habitat of our local fauna. And we can create communal gardens as part of our food security programs, running educational activities with local schools and community groups. On our lunch break, we will order using our usual Uber Eats, Deliveroo, but the difference is that the food will be packed in reusable containers that you can drop off anytime in one of the local cafes or restaurants, so they can use them for the next client. And on your way home, you can access an app like Too Good To Go that will show you a list of restaurants and supermarkets discounting their products at the end of the day to avoid throwing food away. These innovations already exist, so it's only a matter of adopting that more broadly to become the new norm and the part of a new economy, a new circular economy that we live in. So how do we build an economy? Because when we think of the economy, sometimes we associate the concept to supply and demand, right? The economy is made by some producers that supply goods. And on the other hand, the other side is us, consumers, creating demand for the latest smartphones or fancy dress. And the only exchange in this economy is made of money and products. These are somehow put in a massive spreadsheet that tells us what the GDP is and where the economy is growing or not. And I don't see the city council in this scenario. I don't see the city council in this type of economy. And I don't see all the volunteers that work in community groups, for example. So there's something missing in this picture of the economy, because the economy has a few more layers, right? The economy and the GDP logic doesn't take into account whether you were paid a fair wage for your work or whether you have just burned down the whole Amazon forest to create those tables. It has more layers, and we probably need to be a bit more aware of all of these to understand how to change the system, how to change that economy. So the first external layer that we should consider is the fact that we have one planet with limited resources, and without those, there's no economy, there's no product to make. So that is the first layer that we should consider. Inside that layer, we build societies, and within these societies, we have local economies. Whether we talk of an economy at a council, a state, or a country or a global level, the elements that compose it are always the same. You have the market, it's here on the left. That's what we talked about. Sure, there are companies that are producing products, fantastic, but we are also part of the market when we are customers buying from these companies, when we are the employer or the employee inside of that company, or when we are a professional freelancer, for example, consulting a certain company and deciding which direction that company will take. Then on the right here, there's a state, and that includes workers in the public sectors like a city council, but it also includes us as citizens when we decide the direction that our society and our economy takes through a vote or by protesting on the street. Up here, there's the households, where there's a lot of the value that we create in the economy when we look after a sick parent, or when we make dinner for our kids and take them to football practice or to school. And down here, there's the commons. So here we have the volunteers or the co-creators that can organize to create Wikipedia, or that can join in Casey to create together a community garden. So these are more complete look into the economy that starts to let us see where our place is beyond that producer and buyer. So as we said, we do have the technical innovation. We have all of those modular headphones and the electric cars, but we need to make sure that these are available for everyone and that they are used to meet the needs of everyone in society. Otherwise, I'm not sure how many of you have a Tesla, but you know, the technical innovation is there, but personally, I just cannot afford it. So there needs to be a bit of a social component, a social innovation to what we do. And in order to do that, we need collaboration, and we need to make sure that all the actors in the economy are involved with a shared vision for the future and a collaboration that enables the well-being of everyone. I'll give you a couple of examples before we start to think what is stopping us in KZ to become a perfect circular society. In New Zealand, this is an example from Auckland. There are supermarkets in Auckland that are part of the initiative. As you know, a lot of first world countries have a massive problem with food waste.
Don't worry, I'm on mute.
So what they did in Auckland is some supermarkets, what they do is donating the unsold bread. At the end of the day, as you know, there's like a high turnover of food. A lot of that is unsold. So what they do, they just give it to a community group called Citizen. And what the volunteers of Citizen do, they take it to a facility. In this facility, the bread is used and taken through a fermentation process. So it's basically used to make beer and other drinks that they use that fermentation process. And what happens is that through that fermentation, there's always a bioproduct. The bioproduct is a sort of grain compost that is not entirely used during that fermentation for the beer. So that is then taken to a local bakery called White Wheat. And what they do is creating some delicious pastry and bread. Both the beers and the drinks created by Citizen, they're now doing wines as well, if you're thinking of some Christmas presents. And the bread and the pastry produced by Wild Wheat is then taken back to close the loop back into the supermarkets and on the shelves where it came from. So it's a closed loop, it's a local collaboration. It includes all the actors in the economy to create a thriving system that solves the problem, food waste, and actually creates a source of income, new jobs, and so forth. Another example that we hope to see more in the future, it's very recent. This studio, Norwegian studio, just won an award for these projects. It hasn't been built yet, and it will be very interesting to follow up and see how these will play out in the next years, because it's going to be built soon. And what they did is trying to build a resilient and self-sufficient city council. The houses in this area will be built in a similar way to the circular houses that I was describing before. Whereas the council-owned and the community spaces will be designed to host different groups. So they will have very multifunctional spaces that can just be booked very easily. And they will run different activities with different groups 7 days a week, making the most of that space, of the energy and the materials that we're using in the building. So we're optimizing the use of that space. They've created then an autonomous electric bus system that will keep everyone connected. There's a smart grid with some plug-in modules that will power the house with renewable energy. And then you have city roofs, you have businesses and meeting places with photovoltaic modules that will help power the energy grid. So everything is interconnected to create a self-sufficient city. And that's what we hope to see in the future of KC as well, obviously. And we're going in that direction. It might take a little time, but we're going in that direction. And what we would like to do today is to ask you how we can go in that direction, or what is preventing today the city of KC from becoming this ideal self-sufficient city. There could be some themes that maybe you thought about through this presentation, like food security, or the use of certain buildings that today are not activated, or the infrastructures, the use, I don't know, communal gardens and footpaths and so forth. So you can have very different ideas and priorities, and we would like to know what these priorities are. So before we start, is there any questions? We have 27. Okay, good.
That was excellent, Nikki. Such a kind of a step into a possible future, which is so so important for this co-design session as we come together as a community of practice to really explore what the future of Casey looks like as part of City of Casey Innovation Festival. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Lovely. Me too. So I know that in some of you might be familiar with Miro boards, Miro, I don't know how you call it. Some of you might not be. We just want to have an open conversation because, if you prefer to just chat with Sean and I, you don't necessarily need to use it. It's just there to enhance and for me to, and for Sean to record some of the findings, so then we can put it together and share it with you and with those that might have to leave earlier today or weren't able to attend